I'm going to talk to you now about systems toward the management component in your business. I've been instructing you on the marketing and sales component and the ideological component. We've talked about the law of fast reverse. Now I'm going to talk to you about the management, the actual control part. Number one, your employee handbook. Make a list of all key policy areas you deem a high priority: appearance, time off, punctuality, attitude. You can use a templated employee handbook. HLP can provide one of those to you. We do have good templates. However, the disclaimer is we are not an HR consulting firm. We do not have the up-to-date, the latest, greatest HR policy handbook that is in accordance with the state legislature. So it's highly recommended that you contact someone in the HR industry. We recommend a few of them if you'd like a reference that can handle an up-to-date employee handbook for you. The last thing you want to do is to have an outdated employee handbook and find yourself in a lawsuit. It's important to ensure the validity of those policies and adherence with federal and state laws. So do create an employee handbook, and this is an item that you would highlight at the employee orientation, and an individual would go through it. They could sign certain components. You can highlight certain components of it. The bottom line is that you define the rules of the organization. Your employee handbook defines the policies, the safety policies, all of the behaviors that are normal. And these behaviors are items that define clearly what the policy, the rules are in the organization. So without that, you are naked and you are at risk. Second, what is your system for handling a customer complaint by phone? Not all customers can be happy. So part of your job as a company is to manage that process. How do you handle a customer complaint? What is your system for doing that? How do customer complaints get to all levels in the organization? How do they get to upper management? Who does it go to? How does the upper manager interact with that customer complaint? And to when does that get upgraded to upper management? So where does it stay local? When does it get upgraded to a higher level? When does that degree of severity turn into something that's required by a higher up in the company? And when does it stay local? And how is it handled? What is your meeting system? There's something called a rhythm in the organization. A rhythm means how organizational information moves throughout the company. So how often do you make these exchanges? How often? Do you have a daily huddle of 5 minutes? What is discussed in those 5 minutes? Does everybody meet? Is it by department? Ritz-Carlton in each hotel nationally has a 81 to 82 person meeting. Everyone in the hotel huddles for 5 minutes to discuss current events, things they need to know, special people that are staying in the hotel, etc. So that we're all aligned on that particular day, much like a football huddle. What are your weekly meetings? How long are they? Are they 15 to 30 minutes? Do you discuss bottlenecks? Do you give recognition to victories? Do you discuss concerns? Do you briefly go over any new ideas or insights? Do you review a process? What is the agenda? What is your agenda for your monthly meeting? What do you do there that you don't do on your weeklies? What is your agenda for your quarterly meeting? Who meets? Who doesn't? Your biannual meeting and your annual meeting. Define a meeting system that allows timely information to move throughout the organization. Ask yourself what information needs to be shared with who during these intervals so that they can make effective decisions. Next, define your vendor, carrier, broker relations system. You rely on vendors, wholesaling often, to get your products and services out to the customer. You rely on other people that supply you information, stuff, products, things, items, resources that you will give to the customer. How do you coordinate with them? What systems are in place to consistently strengthen vendor relations? What is the monitoring system? How do you define the responsibilities? What are they responsible for? And what are you responsible for? What are the expectations? What is that feedback loop? When a complaint is handled, who does it go to? How will progress be evaluated between you and your vendors? What standards will be enforced? What goal-setting processes are in place to drive progress? How often do they visit your organization? How much should they be involved in the day-to-day decisions? In the weekly, the monthly, the quarterly decisions? What should they know about your vision and direction? What kind of management items should they be integrating with, knowing about, understanding, expecting? Next, as I talked about before, your physical space plan. So what is the setup and how is it designed to create a more qualitative and productive, enhanced workflow? Is the physical space plan in the organization designed to make it easy for staff to work so they can focus and concentrate on what they're supposed to do? Or is it defined to create a lot of hallway talks or water cooler conversations? Is it defined so that the customer gets a true sense of the ideology of the organization? How is it designed? Is it designed to elicit the unique selling proposition? Is it designed to elicit the mission? Is it designed to espouse the values? How is it designed today so that it can get you where you need to be? Define your technology upgrade program. What is it? Are you planning to be paperless? What are the key areas of automation? How could you make it easier and more fun to do business without the paper? Where do you put the paper? Do you use Paperport or a program that scans certain key customer information or sign contracts? How do you condense that information so that you can get more out of your facility, lower your overhead, use the space effectively so that you chuck all your files? You don't need all that paper. You have them computerized into digital documents. Describe your merger and acquisition program. If you're going to franchise prototype, you should be thinking you're going to be attractive to a potential buyer. Are you positioned for it? How could you become more prepared? What do you want to create? Do you want to be acquired? Do you want to merge? What steps or protocols need to be in place to put you in that position? Next, what is your payday strategy? What is your exit strategy? If you were to sell it, how would you go about it? How would you help your business perpetuate itself? It's been said that all business owners are in business to ultimately sell, and that if you treat things this way, as if you were franchising 5,000 times, for example, you'd build the equity organically, automatically, naturally, and shorten the timeline to your financial objectives and your financial independence. Next, how do you innovate ideas and systems in your business? How do you install and test the innovated system? Customer service. What is your customer service plan? What processes and workflows strengthen inbound calls? Your complaint handling system that I mentioned. Again, what is your system for handling customer complaints? Customer request protocols. What is your process to fulfilling customer requests and demands? Product knowledge updating. What processes or procedures are necessary to customer service to be on point, to know their products, to answer all the questions? How do you update their knowledge? Do you send them to a program? Do you have vendors come in and teach? Do you have webinars online that they participate in? Do you require that they stay up to date on product manuals? How do your customer services people enhance your main offer? Do your customers even know they exist? Are your customer service opportunities recurring situations that require constant handling, or are they rare and unique situations that rely on basic policies and philosophies for responding to them? What are the standards you use to ensure that every product or service is consistent, time after time, on time as expected, and on quality? Are those standards subjective, depending on the experience and judgment of the employee operating the system, or are they objective, judged against a clear and specific set of standards, or random? There's no criteria for quality or imposed on the system. Workflow management. What is your workflow system? What is your system for managing projects and tasks? What is your daily management system? What steps are taken to organize daily priorities? Recollectible data storage system. What systems are in place to store key project and task data, such as activity and developments? Is there a software for this? Is it shared throughout the office? What kind of project communication needs to happen between certain peers or subordinates and direct reports to managers, managers to senior management? How are projects accounted for? How are those projects converted into tasks and accounted for? Who is going to account for them? Is it centralized around one person? Is it individually governed? Is it one manager to a group of employees? How is that project management workflow system done so that open loops are eliminated and effective traction is taken? A time system. What is the time system in the organization for managing quarterly priorities and getting to them? The waiting list system. What is the system for tracking items that are waited upon by others? Is there a waiting list? Is there a batch of items to be waited upon? Is there a weekly reminder system that's in place? Paper reduction system. What is your system for managing paper that is inevitable, that you can't go paperless with? How do you manage it? How do you remove it from it being predatory? How do you maintain successful backlog levels? What's the process to rid yourself of that paperwork so that you could touch it once or twice and not anymore? What's the deflection system? What is your system for removing interruptions and distractions from your typical workday? What are the conversation boundary setting items? How does a person assert their boundaries? How does a person get lost or get busy so that other people don't interrupt them? What's the policy on open doors and closed doors? Your meeting systems, not just meeting rhythm, but what about departmental, managerial, financial, cross-functional? There's different topics in these meetings. There's developmental meetings to talk about direction, vision, mission, values, and what we need to do to meet that. There are action planning meetings to reach certain plans and projects. There are informational meetings. There are ongoing performance feedback meetings with the staff. There's a raving fan morale conversion system with the staff, talking about the ideological and the vision components. An innovation and idea development system. So by looking at developments and information and idea development and morale conversion, performance feedback, how does it integrate so that you minimize meetings? Could you minimize meetings? Could it happen through memos? Could it happen through selective people talking to one another? I've seen companies die by meetings. If we have another meeting, we're not going to have any time to actually produce business. So how are you going to delineate the line between too much and too little? That you need to define. How are you going to move information throughout the organization successfully without compromising timing and delays? How are you going to manage those delays? And developmental. How do you keep people tapped into the horsepower and the passion of the organization? How do you tap their imaginations at successful intervals? Maybe those are quarterly. Do you go off-site? Do you go to a retreat? Do you take one day out and get off the field and plan? Look at what you're doing objectively, non-involved? So what's the frequency, content, length, and agenda? Daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, biannual, annual. How do you integrate informational, developmental, and performance feedback into this process? Personnel. Org charting current and future. Illustrate an organizational chart that defines the functions of your business and how communication flows throughout the organization. Do one for current, and then create one for 1 to 3 years in your outlook and needs. How do you plan for manpower within the next 6 months? Consider your manager to worker ratios, directly reporting to managers. If it's over 9, it's too many. So how do you define it? Looking at new geographic regions, your business plan, your marketing plan. What kind of ratios need to be set up? How do you remain profitable keeping your payroll minimized? How do you chart the organization so that the roles are applied to the right responsibilities? Help other people in the organization see those strengths, weaknesses, roles, responsibilities of the others. Much like a football team, a quarterback knows what a blocker does, a defensive end does, knows what a center does, so on and so forth. Descriptions of position. Are your positions documented with performance objectives, duties, and responsibilities, and standards that outline the work and how it will be done? C player management system. Define your protocols on managing C players. How many chances do you give? What kind of disciplinary methods need to be in place, protocols in place to eliminate a C player? To you, is it the good of the many or is it the good of the few? If you've got a cancer in your organization and they stay in too long, the eagles could become turkeys before you know it. So define your C player management system and steps. Your recruiting system. Do you have a step-by-step system for recruiting, hiring, and orienting new employees? What are they? Training and integration system. What are the steps to your training and integration system? How can you quickly and easily train and integrate someone with a low warm-up rate getting into the organization? Can you delegate it to a vendor? A technology? Is there a computer system that asks them questions and then tests them later? How can you get them up to speed on training? Who is responsible for training and integration in your organization? Is it outside or inside or integrated? Your employee orientation program, what I call your kickoff process. What is it? Do you have a president's lunch with each new potential employee? Do you then integrate them into the key processes, the role descriptions of the job? How do they meet their team leader? How do they integrate into the team? How do you orient them into the core ideology and the envisioned future of the organization? How do you learn more about their position on that? Do they find out do they think it's noble? How do you integrate them into the buy-in process? How do you initiate them? What is your conflict resolution system? How can you strengthen conflict resolution capabilities? How is conflict normally handled? What does someone do when they feel they are being mistreated? What does someone do when they find inadequate or unethical behavior in the organization? How do they come to an agreement? How is conflict going to be resolved? Do they manage up? Do they manage across? How do they bring it to someone's attention? What is the process to move from conflict to a peace plan, resolution? How is it done? Do you bring in outsiders? Are there coaches? Mediators? How does it happen? Do you as president, do you take on the role of mediator? Do you have an HR person who handles that for you? What is your conflict resolution system? All forms, contracts, and agreements are in place. Make sure you have a list of all of them there for key positions. Do you have employment contracts, non-disclosure agreements, confidentiality preservation contracts? Make sure all of your risk management methods are in place so you can manage effectively and maintain the continuity of your organization. So I've gone all the way from the core ideology and vision future, the competitive position and strategy, to prototyping a manual, to sales and marketing, to your management system, your customer service program, and your personnel, and how you manage all of these in unison. Your meeting systems that keep information flowing throughout the organization. Now, this process can appear overwhelming. It normally takes about 6 months to put all of these in place. And by saying this, I'm saying you may be being redundant. I mean, certainly there are processes that you have in place, I'm sure, that are working. So I don't want to give you a saw if you've already got a hammer. And I don't want to give you a hammer if you've already got, or if you need a fly swatter. You may not need to go this far. You may be able to create the organization that you want without so much structure. But find a balance between structure and flexibility. I will tell you that I don't think you should wing the sales and marketing wing if you were to pick one of these areas. These areas, the sales and marketing piece, is absolutely vital. The more systematic you are, in my experience, the more effective you will be, because it creates sincere, great financial impact to your organization. Now, go through this again and make a list of 10 systems that you'd like to get to over the next, say, 90 days to 6 months. And via your meetings, your developmental meeting process, how could you support the buy-in and co-create these systems with key players on your team or all of your team so that they can integrate their intellectual property and commit their power to this, commit their excitement, enthusiasm to either redesigning systems or building them from the ground up. One of the most powerful things you can do is to ask your employees to engage in the systems building process. Mr. Employee, if you could make a singular contribution to this organization more than anything else, it's to systemize anywhere you can. Now, getting people to operate in these systems, that's why I explained to you, do the core ideology piece first, because that brings the juice. If you don't have the juice, then there is no why. There's no reason to involve yourself in the systems building process. It's like having a hollow process. There's no oomph. There is no juice. So you must go through the purpose here by virtue of your mission and how these systems would better land you in what these core ideology components define. Now, going through this process with your team, I recommend that you attach stories to the core values. In other words, you pick stories of times when there was a key victory with a system that integrated well with a core value. So if that core value is something that you stand for as principle, pick powerful stories to grapple the emotion, to tease out, to provoke the emotion in people so they can see the buy-in. They can see the connection between that victory and how that victory created a great outcome and how a systems building process led to it. Connect stories, anchor stories to each core value, and see if you can anchor a story that surrounds a system that was better, a system that was improved, and what the outcome was that brought that vision closer, that brought out a true meaningful action, a true meaningful outcome to the organization. So you're off and running. We've talked about the autopilot tool, the systems building process applying the law of fast reverse and how you can work on your business, not just in it. And simplify it down to it's a marathon. It is not a sprint. You go through a set of systems and imagine if you had one per week and that amounted to 52 upgrades in your organization, just imagine the kind of difference it would make over 1 year. Or even half. If you took half of those, if you took 30 of them and did 30 of those over a year, just imagine having that capability, having that system go on autopilot, friction-free, it producing the same outcome every single time. Can you imagine proportionally what that would equate to? Can you imagine the cost that it would save, the kind of quality that it would communicate, the kind of loyalty that you'd have with your customers? This could be the single best competitive advantage that you have.